Good morning everyone. Something different today. I have here a Peugeot Boxer ex East Midlands Ambulance Service ambulance. This belongs to effectively a client. She brought it here on Friday and we've investigated it together over the weekend. The owner actually slept in here over the weekend, so she gave it a sort of a baptism of fire. She bought this some time ago. Some of the cabinetry has been removed, but she needs some help with the electrics, which is something I'm very confident in. So I agreed to do a limited amount of work on this, and we'll see how that progresses. Obviously, when you're doing something for a client, time is of an essence, especially from a cost perspective. So some of the cabinets have already been removed, as you can see, the side there, by her garage. I think the client's going to be doing or engaging third parties to do a lot of the work, although I'm quite happy to teach her as we go along. But some of the cabinets have been removed, and she's left in the cabinets that she would like to keep. So she's got a layout and she's got some ideas about what she wants to do with this van. That may change. I mean, my two vans are changing virtually all the time, but her current intention is to lay it out with a fixed bed at the rear, keep these existing cabinets, add a shower and toilet, and a kitchen. And she did originally want to take the entire bulkhead out, and we may still do that, but at the moment she quite likes the way I've got the bulkhead in was configured. And if you haven't seen my previous videos, watch Project Was or watch the tour, I've got a bulkhead door in there which I made. I did it for two reasons. Firstly, for security. I've made it very strong with a lot of locks on it, so it would take a while for anyone to break it down, should the worst happen. But the other reason was for insulation, effectively. A cab of a vehicle gets very, very hot in the summer and extremely cold in the winter. I'm so impressed with the way this bulkhead store is working at the moment. I'm now considering reinstating a bulkhead in the crafter. Now in this van, I'll show later on, either in this video or in a separate video, this van has got the Genesis system behind the driver's seat, and it has all the relays and other equipment that controls battery charging, various monitoring, various systems that are redundant are on a dedicated panel behind the passenger seat. The battery charger is dead smack in the middle of the bulkhead. Effectively all the control systems are behind the seats, whereas in they were distributed around the van, and I didn't have a great deal of stuff I needed to actually take out. But in order to take the bulkhead out of this one, it's either all of the Genesis system has to come out, or a significant part of it has to come out, and what remains needs to be relocated. And there's two schools of thought here. If this was my van and time was unlimited, I'd probably rip the whole lot out. But for a customer that's paying for something, that may not be the most cost-effective solution, especially when you consider the Genesis system offers various functions, alerting for doors open, for example. The Genesis system controls battery charging, so there's some money to be saved in time, and there's some money to be saved in buying systems to replace what you're taking out. But what we actually do with this van will develop. The client's coming back in a couple of weeks' time to see what I've done and how far we got. One of the features of this particular type of van is the ramp. This is a fold-out wedge. The normal process with ambulance conversions is to take the ramp out. The one in my craft was internal to the van and weighed 160 kilograms and was in the way, it had to come out. The one in my Sprinter behind me probably weighed near 300 to 400 kilos, was bolted on the back of the vehicle, huge amount of weight, and again needed to come out. This ramp actually forms part of the floor. In order to remove this, at a minimum it's taking the wedge part out, and then as you can see the wedge part also forms the door lock striker. So if you take that out, you've got to think about a way to replace that missing striker. It's going to require a degree of engineering, bodywork or whatever. And I think the wedge is only fiberglass, and I don't think the wedge is particularly heavy. So my opinion right now to the client is leave it in and board over it. Or leave it in and actually leave it in a working state. It is actually very, for a van conversion for carrying motorbikes, these things are fantastic because you've actually got a fully functional wedge ramp. But I do not believe this particular fitting weighs a great deal. It also makes a very useful step for standing on and sitting on. So I've suggested she leaves it, and it's pretty up to her at the moment. But I'll investigate a bit more later on. I may actually take the wedge part out and just weigh it because I'm curious what it weighs. I think the motor that operates it's inside. This van's also got air suspension as well. You can lower the suspension down to depending on where the wedge is. It's not adjustable when you're driving, it's just up or down. And it works. Some people rip it all out and replace it with springs if it becomes problematic. Right now, again, for the client, it's working. There are controls for it over here that allow you to operate the ramp and the suspension independently. There's also an up-down button on the dashboard. One thing that is annoying and will have to be dealt with is the air suspension is controlled via the Genesis system, and it has got a air reservoir on top of the compressor, and all the time the Genesis system is awake the compressor's topping itself up. That would have to be isolated from the Genesis system. Same as several other parts of the circuits. We don't obviously need the lights via Genesis because when Genesis shuts down after an hour, whatever the default is, all the lights will go off. The heating as well needs to be isolated. But a few other bits and pieces that are part of the Genesis general control system, the climate control, which only works when the engine's running, and a few other bits and pieces, they can remain connected to the Genesis system. So there isn't a huge amount of unnecessary work to do. The biggest issue that I feel is going to be a problem with this ambulance is exactly the same as I found if you watch the videos from my crafter, Project Thistle. This is actually quite well built. The white the white fiberglass panels on the wall are about 10mm thick. In my previous ambulance these were made of 3mm PVC, and they broke the second I tried to actually take them off. They were just very fragile. I think and I hope these panels will come off in one piece, and they're going to have to come off because this van, just like my crafter, is not well insulated. It appears to be better insulated. There is at least 50mm of Celotex insulation in that ceiling, but the way they've implemented it means it's flawed. Every single one of those holes up there, speakers, lights, access panels, punches directly through the insulation to get to the metal roof void. That allows moist air through. There's no insulation at all, and water has actually been, can you see the screws undone? That very last light I've actually taken apart. There was water pouring out of that when this van arrived on Friday. There is so much condensation forming on the metal skin where it's not insulated for about a 2 or 3 inch gap above the lights, that it's actually creating puddles on top of the insulation, and that just finds the lowest place to fall out. And in this case it was that light there and the courtesy light, which isn't working, above there. In the wall panels, pretty much every wall panel we've managed to explore, there's a hole up there above that whiteboard. There's no insulation in that hole at all. It's straight through to the bare metal. Lower down in the far corner on the right where the diesel heater is, there's an access panel that allowed you to get to the mains hookup socket. There was a small piece of rock wall in there, about a third of the size of the hole. So my gut feeling is all of this plastic and metal is going to have to come off to get the van properly insulated. What I hope though is this stuff is strong enough to take off in one piece, because it's nice material and it will be nice to put it back on. Plus the metal sheeting, because this white fiberglass or plastic is actually over sheets of aluminium that have been bonded to the van. Most of the metal sheeting has got all the various screw nut holes. They're called scrivets, where all the furniture is bolted to. And if the client wants to reuse these top cabinets and the cabinet there that she's taken off, it would be ideal to reuse the bolt holes. If you look at the very back there, you can see that one cabinet that's sitting on the floor. They're all the bolt holes. Each one of those is a scrivet. So it will be entertaining getting this stuff off, but I have a feeling in order to have a reasonable degree of adequate insulation, there's no choice. Same with the floor. The floor is just plywood, 18mm plywood, bonded or screwed or whatever they do directly to the metal of the body. There's no insulation under there. She's very, very lucky. This ambulance didn't have loads and loads of unwinds tracks in it, because they are a pain in the neck to remove, and they track condensation like you wouldn't believe. One of my videos showed us spending many a happy hour taking the tracks out of my other ambulance. The floor's not in bad condition. Obviously it's got a dirty grate slot in it from this. I think the most common, sensible thing to do with this floor will be to leave it in place, put a small amount of insulation on top of it and board over it, and that also then manages to board over this. But again, that would be her choice. I can't see, unfortunately, whether the metal floor is rusty, whether the paintwork's failed, but these are pretty well made, these Ducato bodied vehicles, or several bodied vehicles. They've got galvanisation on the lower body pan, so there's no need to take this floor up unless 100% necessary, and I'd be inclined just to insulate over the top of it. But again, that may change, but that's certainly the suggested moment, just to save time and money. My current brief, my current plan over the next few days is to remove that cabinet there, remove those electrical boxes down there. They are the leftovers from the closed circuit TV system. The cameras are still in place. There are overlay modules in there that provide GPS information and voice overlays onto the recording. Not sure what that flashing light is. It does vary in pulse. It might be a PIR, so it detects movement. Linked to, there's a little sensor at the top there, which I haven't identified yet. But everything in that train is coming out. That cabinet's coming out, the seat's coming out, and the frame it's mounted to is coming out, and the box that is in the back there, that's where the diesel heater is. I'll leave the diesel heater on the floor for the time being, but that box is coming out, probably. And then I'm going to remove the white cladding around the window, and we'll see what kind of access we can make through to the seats without tearing everything to pieces. I'm hoping that this ambulance is built in a similar way to the Wilker ambulances, and there's actually a steel, it's not a solid metal bulkhead, it's a steel framework behind there. That's what I think I'll find, but I won't know until I take it apart. But that's the initial plans. Get to a point where we've got access through to the cab, deal with a lot of the redundant electrics. There's also, behind that blue Tesco crate, there's a winch for pulling the stretcher up the ramp. Obviously some people are a bit enormous, and these poor ambulance crew operators, I think, often need all the help they can get. That's coming out. She may well be able to sell that separately. The vehicle's done 540,000 miles. I have never worked on a vehicle with so much miles in it, and I'm also quite impressed at the mechanicals. It's as sound as anything. It's had a replacement engine in the past, and it's mucky. One of the very first jobs I will be doing before I do anything to this is taking the seats out, taking the matting out, and cleaning up the inside of the cab area so that I can work safely. It's disgustingly filthy. There's 6 or 7 years there of detritus, food, exactly the same as I found in my other two vans. It's hideously dirty, and obviously there could be other things there that, you know, needles maybe, or odd things that I don't want to be catching myself on. So it's going to be cleaned up first of all, just for my own personal safety. Then I have all the seats out, and then I can actually get to grips with pulling through some of this cabling before I take all these cabinets out. The batteries, there's 3 nice quality AGM batteries there. If those batteries are good, that's a lot of money's worth. There's probably 750 quid worth of batteries there, in a lovely cage, although we're going to have to try and rotate that round to put the batteries on the floor. The cabling all runs under the floor of the van. 2 of the batteries are in parallel, and they're being used for the auxiliary circuits, lights and everything else, and there's 1 battery there used for the comms, the radio channel, so that battery is currently redundant, so all 3 will end up in parallel. There's a really good quality Sterling Power battery charger dead centre of the bulkhead below that window. They're over £500 new, and when you consider you don't have to pay a lot for these ambulances, some of the stuff you get in them almost pays for it. I mean, I would say the batteries, the battery charger, the diesel heater, and if the aircon works in the back of this vehicle, she's got her money's worth just in that, and the rest of the van is almost a bonus. Now I'm just going to move the camera across, so I'll pause for a moment. Something I noticed yesterday, there's water coming out of it. Now when Sally drove here on Friday, it was raining hard. I suspect that's coming from the sills. I hope it's coming from the sills, and I hope it's not draining down the inside. It's not condensation draining down the inside of the body of the van. But there are puddles, and that puddle's been there now for 2 days. So there's a fair amount of water dripping out of something. It could well be that the drains in the sills are blocked, and that's coming out. That appears to be coming out where the seam is. You can actually see a seam just in front of that window there. It's dripping out at the point where the seam is, so I actually think that probably one of the sills is blocked, and it's doing the same on the other side. But because my carport here is slightly sloped, it's draining more on this side. You can see that Heath Robinson cable. Originally this van was 110 volts. So yesterday I proved out the mains cabling just to verify where it went and how it's connected, and check everything could run at 230. And the battery charger is the only thing that is connected to this. There was no inverter in this van. There's no mains distribution whatsoever. And what surprised me is the battery charger is wired directly to this formerly 110 volt cable. There's no circuit breaker, no on-off switch, nothing. It's just a direct connection. So all the protection, all the fusing, all the isolation was done at the distribution side in the ambulance depot. I'm quite surprised at that, because electrical safety is paramount, and I would have thought there would have been an isolation switch somewhere. The only other thing that was connected to the mains incoming cable was a DIN rail relay carrier. Optionally, if this van had had an inverter in it, that relay would have been used to tell the Genesis system whether the van was on mains hookup or not, and then the Genesis system would switch the inverter on and off. The carrier was there, the wiring's there, but the relay was not missing, and that relay would have been 110 volt. But other than that, that mains lead, which I've temporarily put a 13 amp plug on just so I could actually charge the batteries, that just goes directly to the battery charger and nothing else. So very simple to diagnose that one. Didn't have to do anything at all, and it meant we could check that the battery charger worked, made sure she got her £500 worth, and we could also put some charge in the batteries, which surprisingly are holding up quite well. We've had the systems running in this van on and off nearly all weekend. The heating works. Pretty much everything seems to work, with the exception of the rear central locking's got a mind of its own, and the reversing camera or monitor isn't working. The dashboard's in a right mess, so I think I'll just move forward now to the front of the vehicle. So this is the cab. I've taken out the passenger seat. I needed to be able to get to the battery charger, which is that Boxer Trix there from Sterling Power. It's a Pro Charge Ultra 60 amp charger. It's currently configured to charge up 3 battery banks, the chassis battery, comms battery and the auxiliary batteries. Above there, a couple of torch carriers for rechargeable torches. The rear window. In the far corner is a bracket for a fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher's gone. The Genesis control system is behind this cover here. It's got 5 Genesis modules plus a voice control module for the annoying woman that tells you things repeatedly until you obey her commands. That grey box on the right of the battery charger is the control unit for the winch, the stretcher winch. Directly below that, can you see it? I'm pointing in the wrong place, sorry. Where is it? Limitations of this. Yeah, directly below there, you can just see that little tiny box there. That's where the mains comes in. The mains cable is wired to the battery charger literally the cables are just soldered together, a bit of heat shrink on, and that little blue thing in the back there, that is the DIN rail carrier for the optional relay, which, as I said, I think is for the inverter. The cab area is horrible. There is filth and dirt everywhere, and as I said, I need to clean it up before I can work on it. There's screws where the vehicle's been through the decommissioning process, and then various stages of things happen to ambulances before they have to get sold to an end user. My one had batteries taken out of it even after I'd agreed to buy it. You know, things just get... Traders, basically, if they're saying that they can take out the vehicle and flog it on eBay, I think that's what they do. And this vehicle, it's had the entire console there torn apart. Bits of it are still in the back of the van. I don't think all of it's there, but there was originally a display there, a display panel of some kind for the ambulance system, plus there was a central console in the middle here that housed the Genesis control unit, similar to that one there. That one's my unit. I've just popped out of my van. I'm just using that to monitor a few things, because the sliding door and rear door switches don't work. I'm just curious whether they don't work or they're not operating the lights. So I'm going to use that to see if it's telling me whether they're on or off or not. That also gives me an output for the batteries as well. This van has a battery guard system. There's a yellow button just above the... Zoom that up a bit to eye height. Can you see that yellow button? Yeah, it's just visible there. There's a yellow button there. That connects to one of the circuits in the second part of the Genesis control system. I suspect when the chassis battery gets down to perhaps 12.2 volts, I don't know exactly what it's configured for, but it completely isolates the power to the chassis battery, so there's no risk of not being able to start the engine if it's been left with lights and things on for many hours at a time or whatever during an incident. On the right hand side, behind the passenger seat, are all the relays, fuses and related wiring for most of the services in the van. If you watch my videos for Project Was, you'll see that in that van it was distributed all over the place. Most of these relays were in the battery box on the side of the vehicle. The intercom, which is the unit at the top right there in my other vans, was in the seat box. But as you can see, these Sevil's vans, Fiat relays, Fiat or Citroen relays, or Fiat Ducato, Citroen relay, or the Peugeot Boxer, they don't have a seat box. So the converters are obviously stuffing everything on the back here instead of the seat boxes. So some of this stuff is going to be redundant, some of it may be rewirable, but there's a heck of a lot of relays and a heck of a lot of fuse in there, which surprises me because the Genesis system itself does power management. Each output on the Genesis system has a rating, a current rating, and it's got its own internal fusing. So they have either doubled up on systems, or there's a lot more there to explore than meets the eye. But you can see already there's a lot of stuff in the back of this, in the front of this vehicle. To relocate a lot of this is timely. To tear it all out is timely, because what you tear out you may have to recreate. So again, that's why we're currently thinking, can we make a walkthrough between there so as you can get in and out. As I said, that may change, but that's current thinking. But today's exercise is really just getting ready, taking out some of the furniture, take the seat frames out, take up all the matting. Unfortunately the matting's been cut up in order to make room for what was originally a centre console there that holds the radio and various things. So the matting's shot, it's ruined, replacement's going to be required or something there. And you can also see there are 3 cables there. That's to the contactor in the corner here. That provides, oh, there's a dog in the way. Sam, excuse me. Sam. There's 3 cables there. That's 12 volts in, 12 volts out to a relay as part of the battery isolation circuit. Charging cables, various other cables that go forward to the front of the vehicle for originally the blue lights in the grille, the horns and sirens and so on. You know, stuff from the Genesis system. Most of that will be coming out. There's also a bird's nest there. That went to the radio, and if a few other items. It's all redundant. In a way, it's probably good that half this dashboard's been ripped to pieces, because I haven't got to dismantle it to get at it. And there's going to be a job for Sally, the owner, to go to the breakers and obtain all the missing parts, because we've got some of them, but they've all been got out with a hacksaw to make room for the equipment they had mounted up there. But I'll be losing most of this cabling and these various boxes and bits and pieces. I'll trace it through to find the cabling under the bonnet and just make it safe. There's lots of chopped off cables in the back of the van where they've torn out things that they wanted to keep, because obviously the ambulance service, they're not stupid. Things like this control panel here, they're £300 brand new, and they don't seem to be that reliable. I've seen a lot where the button, like on mine, the buttons are the sticky surround for the buttons is coming apart. But the most common problem seems to be that display, the display for the voltage and the warning messages. The display fails. I managed to buy a replacement just to display on its own from Carnation Designs for about 70 quid for that unit. But the display, it's a standard item made by a commercial company, but they'll only sell them to you in batches of thousands. So I had to go directly to Carnation Designs, and I haven't found an alternative. But all in all, clean up job, and then begin the strip out stage. Get the battery charger out of the way, get that grey box out of the way, remove the charger for the torches, get rid of this grey box here with those cables. That was probably it's a DC to DC power supply, so it may well have been for charging up the batteries in the stretcher. I like the way this ambulance has been equipped. It's got LED lighting all over the place in the cab. There's lights up there, several of them. The doors have got really bright red strip LED lights on them, too bright perhaps, they're almost blinding. There's lights underneath the puddle lights rather, underneath the doors. It's very, very nice. Some of it's obviously standard on the Peugeot, but a lot of it's been added. It's also got some scene lights which work, and it's got alley lights which would work if she had the correct control panel. So I think we'll be wiring those separately. The cab ceiling headliner is fixed. It's not like the one in my Sprinter where you can actually get your head up there. That's got, inside the vehicle, there's the air conditioning unit directly above where that, I think it's a speaker, there's the air conditioning unit for the saloon is above there, and then there's a useful cubby hole on that side, although I'm not entirely sure whether it's well insulated. But I'll pause now. Next video, once I've ripped some of this out so I can actually start working on it. But I thought I'd just provide a quick overview. And just to close, the owner's called this ambulance Peter Kelly, after her father. So this is why I've put this on YouTube as Project Peter Kelly. Thanks for watching.